So, in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the Caps as they prepare for game number 1 in the second round. We're starting it off all over again against the Hurricanes. What can we expect from the Capitals in game 1? I'll talk about that a bit later. Anthony Beauvillier, a player that was picked up at the trade deadline. And to be clear here, I don't think there was real high hopes for him. I think that they saw him as a depth move. I'll talk about why Anthony Beauvillier has been better than expected. Later, I'll talk about Tom Wilson's impact. We will never forget his contributions, or his biggest contribution, shall we say, in game number 4 against the Canadiens. Tilted the ice in the Capitals' favor, and why, in a large way, they moved on to the second round. But just to get it going here, we'll talk about the Capitals as they prepare for game number 1 of the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and a lot of questions surrounding the Capitals. That the breaks seem to be exactly what the doctor ordered at exactly the right time. As coming off that Canadiens series, you got to think a lot of the players are maybe a little sore, maybe a little bit dinged up, that maybe some of the players that were really feeling it, or maybe some of the players that were almost borderline not being in the mix in game 1 will be full go in game number 1. Now, that's one way of looking at it. Another way, however, of looking at it is will the Capitals be rusty to start this series, as they have had some extended time off? So, it's kind of a good thing. I think that, what they say, something that's in motion stays in motion. That I think in a lot of ways that had the Capitals had a shorter break, that might have been more advantageous, as they were playing with a lot of momentum. So that momentum snowball, if you will, has to get going again. And, the players spending time at home with their wife and kids, or whatever the case might be, kind of took their head out of the game for a little bit. Now it's time to batten down the hatches again and get ready for warfare against a Carolina Hurricanes team where, in a lot of different metrics, it shows that the Carolina Hurricanes are a better team. And many of those predictors or indicators favor the Hurricanes winning round number 1. So let's dive into the latest with the Capitals as they prepare for action in game 1 of the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And all things considered, I'm feeling very good about the Capitals right now. I know that, I like to push outside the outside noise as much as I can, try to be a neophyte as much as I can, and just try to keep it internal, because if you let a lot of the outside noise in, that can sometimes skew your opinion. Now, the very fact that the Capitals are in the playoffs at all is something that those same insiders that said the Capitals are going to be eliminated against the Hurricanes, those same voices last summer said the Capitals weren't good enough to make it to the playoffs. So that's why I think it's important to put some weight into it, but don't put all your eggs in those experts' baskets, if you will. So today we're getting you set for round 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs, where the Caps get ready to face the Canes. Puck drop, of course, Tuesday night at Cap One. Now, the biggest thing the Capitals need to circle here is the momentum starts at home at Cap One. The Capitals need to make the most of this opportunity. If they can take the first 2 games and have a 2-0 lead in this series, that definitely puts the momentum in their favor. You saw that impact in the first round against the Canadiens, that I think the Capitals need to do their level best to hit the ground running in game number 1. We do not want to let the Hurricanes into this game. It has to be a full 60-minute game. And I've preached that, and Spencer Carbery and everyone's preached it all season long. They need to do it. And even if they have a lead, they cannot take their foot off the gas. If you want to take a look at a prime example, take a look at the Blues in Winnipeg series. That came down to the wire, and the Winnipeg Jets skated away victorious. That is kind of exemplifies that you need to play that full game. So let's start with the big story, the break. What was supposed to be a short rest turned into nearly a full week off after the St. Louis Blues forced a Game 7 in their series against Winnipeg. And, a week off, it was probably good to spend time with family and friends and just take a load off, as it is a long season. The hockey season is a long one and a very physical series. If you take a look at the NBA, and I'm not here to disparage the NBA other than to say some players leave with, sore ankles or, calves that are a little flexed up, and then you take a look at hockey players like the hit that Wilson laid out on Carrier. And at the end of the day, Carrier skated off the ice. So it definitely is a physical game that I don't think gets enough. I think that it's good that they get this rest, but I just hope it wasn't too much rest. So now, is that good or bad? I guess we don't know. We kind of dealt with this same thing after the Four Nations face-off of what kind of Capitals team were we going to see coming out of that. So I think it's important to put some weight into it, but not exclusively. The Capitals closed out the Canadiens last Wednesday. Carolina wrapped up against New Jersey the day before, so both teams are coming in rested. So I guess it's all about mindset. It almost has to be a first, like these guys that get called in for military maneuvers, like you're resting 1 minute and scramble the jets. We got someone coming into our airspace. You got to be ready to go like right now. So the Capitals are going from 0 to 100 from, around a week's time off here to full game action. They need to be ready because, like we say, the Canes, they had a lot of time off as well. I think it's going to be about mental toughness in this series, and the team that is able to just really get into it right off the moment's notice. So as soon as the game starts, I think that the team that scores the first goal, I think that will set the tone for not only the first game, but at least the first two games of the series. Now, 6 days for the Canes, 5 for the Caps. Spencer Carbery originally liked the idea of a short breather, which I agree with, but the Blues won, extending the schedule. It forced the team into more idle time than expected. So all things considered, it is what it is. I mean, the Capitals didn't really get any choice. They didn't ask them, how long of a break you would like, but it's all about that mental toughness. And at the end of the day, they're professional athletes. And we know that this team can dig deep a lot better than we've seen in previous years, where they faced any kind of opposition and they were just sticking their head in their turtle shell saying, tell me when it's over. That if you take a look even at the first round, even though you would take a look at the wins and losses in the first round, it seemed like it was decisive for the Capitals. Bounces here or there could have definitely won at least 1 or 2 more games, I think, for the Canadiens. So the Capitals need to maintain their momentum, right out of the gate, and hopefully that can help propel them forward. But Spencer Carbery had a quote. He said, quote, I think there's pros. I think it would be maybe be a happy medium to start Sunday or Monday. Tuesday is a little bit of a lengthy break, which it will be, but we're going to have been off for 5 days. I also think you can use it to your advantage, unquote. So how did the Capitals make use of their time off? Thursday off, optional skate Friday, full practice Saturday, off Sunday, practice Monday, and according to players like Strome and Mangiapane, the vibe is locked in. And I think that the Capitals shouldn't deviate too much from what got them here, that we hear a lot of weight being put into locker room chemistry and all of that. And why I'm not a big believer in it, I think that if you have, your morale in a good place, and I think that, those pregame antics, I'm talking about bands that make them dance with Ovechkin and the crazy dance between Carlson and Wilson and all the stuff that's going out in the tunnel there. Those are the things that have worked for the Capitals all season long. So I think don't try to fix something that isn't broke. That if you can go into it, carefree, going into it in a positive mindset, then I'm out there I'm playing hockey with my friends. I think that has worked for the Capitals all season long. I think they should continue in that. And I don't think we should overthink if it's been too much time. I think that those are the people that are looking for things that can go wrong. I'm just bringing it up as something to consider as we get going in this series here. But taking a look at it, Strome said it best, quote, rest is always good for us. When we have a little bit of a lighter schedule, it seems like we're pretty dialed in. That's a good sign heading into a brutal matchup. And that leads us to the next segment, the heavyweights that are going to be in this tournament. I'm talking Tom Wilson and the role that I think physicality will play in this series. What kind of role does Tom Wilson and physicality, what kind of role does that have for the Capitals? And what will it mean in round number 2? I'll discuss straight ahead.